Good morning. I'd like to call the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means and Senate Committee on Finance Subcommittees on K through 12 Higher Education CIP hearing to order. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Senators Buck, Canizaro, Scheibel, Stone, Dondero Loop, Assembly Members Hafen, Haudegi, Koenig, Monroe Moreno, O'Neill, Torres Fawcett, Yeager, and Backus, Chair Backus.
And I am here. On today's agenda, welcome everyone actually. On today's agenda, we have subcommittee budget closings, making recommendations to the Joint Committee on State Public Charter School Authority. And then after that, we'll have a work session on Nevada System of Higher Education and conclude with public comment. For those wishing to make public comment this morning, the telephone number to dial in is 888-475-4499. When prompted, provide meeting ID 821-826-87077 and then press the number sign. When prompted for participant ID, just have to press the number sign again. We'll limit public comment this morning to 2 minutes, and that will be at the end of our hearing. With that, we're going to go ahead and open the budget closing, making recommendations for the State Public Charter School Authority, and I'll go ahead to turn this over to staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Yuri Yakovlev, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. I'll be presenting the closing documents for 2 State Public Charter School Authority budgets, the first of which was previously heard by the subcommittee on February 11th. This is the authority's main budget, and it starts on page 3. The State Public Charter School Authority, deemed a local education agency pursuant to statute, is responsible for authorizing charter schools throughout the state and providing oversight and assistance to sponsored schools. For the 2024-25 school year, the authority sponsors 44 charter schools. The authority's main budget is funded with an administrative fee sponsored to charter schools, which is also pursuant to statute. Additionally, the authority receives various federal grant funding transferred from the Nevada Department of Education. The major closing issue is a recommendation to utilize $3.5 million in reserves for 14 new positions and 2 positions recommended for continued funding to address current and projected workloads due to increases in sponsored schools. These positions are split into 5 decision units, which are based on priority. Starting at the bottom of page 3 and through page 5, fiscal staff provides background information showing the authority's current and projected enrollment, sponsored school counts, and campus counts. Compared to fiscal year 2025, there is a 13% and 17% enrollment increase in the upcoming biennium, a 25% increase in the number of sponsored schools, and 15% increase in number of campuses. There's also a table at the bottom of page 4 that provides the current amount of positions approved in the budget and the governor's recommendations. As a local education agency, the authority provides training and technical assistance, conducts risk assessments, monitors federal programs, and manages the fiscal functions of all state and federal grant programs, as well as administering competitive federal grants to sponsored schools. The 3 areas of operation that the authority indicates the recommended positions would address is listed towards the middle of page 5. So picking up on page 5, the first decision unit is E125, which is a recommendation for 6 new positions. First is an education programs director to lead a new monitoring and evaluations team and oversee all monitoring and evaluation activities. Currently, site evaluations, which are required to be completed in certain timeframes by Nevada Revised Statutes 388A 223, are conducted by 5 existing positions spread out under multiple teams and supervisors. As such, schools must balance multiple visits and work is being duplicated, though the authority is meeting the statutorily required timelines. The duplication of efforts was elaborated by the authority during the February 11th hearing, and if approved, the 5 existing positions, which includes one of the 2 positions recommended for continued funding through Decision Unit E129, would operate under this new team, along with 2 other new positions recommended in this decision unit and decision unit E126. During the hearing, the authority indicated that if the position is not approved, there are no existing positions that would be able to perform an analysis of the multiple teams and eliminate redundancies. The next position in this decision unit is a management analyst that would operate under the new monitoring and evaluations team by monitoring organizational, fiscal, and academic performance for new and struggling schools and assist in site evaluations. The 2023 legislature approved a new management analyst position at a grade 33 for this purpose. However, that position was repurposed to focus on another workload during the interim. This new position is recommended at a grade 39, which would be performing the work in a more complex nature by providing training and early intervention support directly to schools rather than just monitoring financial reports, necessitating more experience for the incumbent and therefore the higher pay grade. Accordingly, the authority indicates the existing position is not able to be reclassified into the higher level position as they do not have the experience necessary to provide the training and high level financial oversight for sponsored schools. Next is another management analyst to oversee the charter school application, renewal, and amendment process along with the organizational performance framework submissions process. The performance framework is a checklist for schools to follow to ensure they're operating in compliance and being held accountable with standards developed off national best practices. As the number of sponsored schools has grown, the existing management analyst that oversees both processes would be moved to the financial performance framework team to address their workload needs. Another new management analyst is recommended to implement a new Medicaid billing initiative. Currently, charter schools do not receive Medicaid reimbursements for eligible services, and they cannot submit claims to the Division of Healthcare Financing and Policy's third-party administrator for reimbursement. However, the authority, as a local education agency, can. To implement the initiative, the authority indicates it needs an electronic records system and agent billing services, which has been submitted in a work program for $38,000 to initiate a pilot program for 3 sponsored schools. The plan for the initiative isn't finalized yet, so the costs for the upcoming biennium aren't either, as it is unclear how many more schools would take part in the initiative in each respective year. Prior to the hearing, the authority indicated it would move forward with the initiative regardless of the new position being approved. However, during the hearing, the authority testified a temporary contract position is overseeing the implementation of this initiative currently. If the contract position accepts a permanent job that offers benefits such as paid time off and health care, the authority wouldn't have any positions to oversee the initiative, which may result in delayed reimbursements for charters. After the hearing, the authority has received provider enrollment status through the Division of Healthcare Financing and Policy, allowing the authority to bill for Medicaid eligible services. And if approved, the authority indicates schools would be able to enhance early identification of healthcare needs and connect pupils with a range of healthcare services. Next is an education programs professional to support sponsored schools with implementing special education services and ensuring pupils with disabilities are supported as required by the Federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. There's 2 existing positions that provide the support. One of them is the other position recommended for continued funding through Decision Unit E129. The authority indicates it cannot provide the support and training needed for the sponsored schools with 6,866 pupils that have an individualized education plan. If approved, along with the other position, there would be 3 full-time staff dedicated to this area. Additionally, the authority handles complaints filed on behalf of pupils with individualized education plans. If a family member, for example, doesn't think their child is being supported, they could file a complaint or even sue. During the hearing, the authority indicated special education is a highly litigious area, and the addition of this new position would allow the authority to provide proactive training to schools for the implementation of individualized education plans, rather than reactive training to minimize risk of incidents and complaints. Finally, there is an education programs professional to support schools in the implementation of multi-tiered systems of support, which is a proactive and preventative framework to support students' social, emotional, academic, and behavioral needs. The authority currently has 2 contract positions funded by federal grants that are set to expire in the beginning of fiscal year 2026 for this purpose. This and 1 other position recommended in Decision Unit E127 are recommended to replace the contract positions and provide on-site coaching, training, and technical assistance, among other tasks. If they are not approved, the authority would not have any dedicated staff for this purpose. If approved, they would have 1 staff per every 11.5 schools. The University of Nevada, Reno's Positive Behavior Interventions and Support Technical Assistance Center recommends a ratio of 1 to 4. During the hearing, the authority testified the level of service currently provided could be maintained even at a ratio of 1 to 11.5. Moving on to page 10, there is a minor technical adjustment to remove operating expenses that were included inadvertently. So does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of reserve reductions of $583,097 in fiscal year 2026 and $812,414 in fiscal year 2027 for 1 new education programs director, 3 new management analyst positions, and 2 new education programs professional positions and associated operating costs as recommended by the governor in Decision Unit E125, inclusive of the noted technical adjustment.
Thank you so much for the presentation on our first enhancement, Unit 125. Members, do we have any questions for staff regarding this enhancement number? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could we have some clarification on the vendor that will be implementing the software, like what the exact duties are and where that changes with the enrollment of Medicaid, and how is that happening now? I understand that they aren't billing for Medicaid right now. So does that mean they're not billing, period, or does that mean they're billing through a different way? I'd just like a little more clarification.
Yuri Yakovlev for the record. My understanding is that the billing is not happening right now. The work program for the electronic record system and agent billing services was very recently approved. The position recommended would provide more of the oversight and serve as a point of contact between the vendor, the Division of Healthcare Financing and Policy, and the charter schools and the Department of Education. And they would also develop the policies and procedures for the initiative and also help charter schools enroll children in Medicaid.
Members, any other questions for staff regarding E125? Okay, one moment. I just wanted to make a comment. When looking at this, these different enhancement items, it's always tough when the first agency comes before a subcommittee budget closing, because obviously this session we're looking at tightening dollars just because we don't know where we're going to be at the end of the day. And I know these are fee-funded items, but one thing I just noticed, and I'm just going to put this out to the committee members to kind of think about, is one of the positions during the interim, and there's an ask for it, is under E125 is an education programs professional grade 39 to handle the special education. They have another position that was just filled during the interim. Some of the things that we're looking at, obviously, folks, we have our full closing on Saturday as well, but also on this one in the interim could be filled like this one. The other one that I was looking at as well is on our multi-tier level, the behavioral health, that's already currently filled by a vendor. I know that expires October 1st, 2025, but I'm open to any motion with respect to this closing item, whether we do it as set forth or eliminate a couple positions. I'll go to Chair Dondero. Chair Monroe Marino. Looked right at you, called you the wrong name.
That's okay. Thank you, Manager. I have a question. With federal grants right now in a position, we don't know where we're going to be. And we know that in the last 2 weeks, there has been funding that has been pulled down both in education and in health and human services. So funding positions that are directly related to grants, I'm not sure is the responsible thing to do at this time because we don't know what future cuts are coming. We know there will be some cuts, we just don't know what those are. I'm not sure how, given direction to staff today, what we should do, but I think we need to be very conservative in what we do. I would hate for us to agree to funding positions that may not be there and they hire someone, we have to lay that person off when we lose that grant funding. Just the unknowns concern me.
Okay, so with that, what I'll go ahead and do is I think the proposed motion would be that the subcommittee would recommend approval of reserve reductions for the positions listed under E125 with the exception of the education programs professional grade 39 that provides assistance that have implemented a form of multi-tiered systems of support, which is the position that's currently filled by a vendor supported by federal funding, as well as inclusive of the noted technical adjustment to remove operating expenses that were inadvertently included.
Madam Chair, I would move to approve as you stated.
Second.
Thank you so much. I have a first from Chair Dondero Loop, a second from Chair Monroe Marino. Is there any discussion on the motion? We'll go to Assemblymember Hafen.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to confirm that we're not eliminating any current positions that are going to be overseeing the federal grants, because I do see that they will be expiring October 1st. So I just want to make sure that we're not going to be losing the positions that are managing those current funds through the October 1st date. And so this is just the new positions that were being recommended. I just want to make sure that's clear on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Hafen. I can answer that. We would still have the vendors in place under the federal grant till October 1st, 2025. This would be the implementation of a new position.
I appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
And then we'll go to Assemblymember Torres Fawcett.
Thank you, and I'm definitely going to support this motion. I just want to say, to the extent that we're able to find additional funding for MTSS, I think that's such an important part of our schools to make sure that students are receiving that social emotional supports. And I do believe that the MTSS role within the SPCSA does play a very vital role in supporting schools with the implementation of those programming and some of the stuff that we have passed in this body, like AB 285 of last legislative session. So I hope that we can find other ways to support MTSS and within SPCSA.
Thank you so much. Any other discussion on the motion? With that, we'll go to Senator Buck.
Thank you so much, Chair Bacchus. I was just curious if staff could get me, and I'll support this motion, but a similar district is Washoe County District, and I was just wondering if the staff could help see how many staff in that district actually are in the MTSS program and supporting that in that district, so we can just look and kind of try and fund similarly.
Staff does not have that information. With that, I don't even know if our charter school authority would have that information or if that's something we would have to get back to the senator from the Washoe School District. We do have the full closing on Saturday, though, so I would encourage if you can reach out, or we can hopefully maybe put you in contact. Does someone else have a? Oh, well, I'll go to Chair Dondero Loop.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And with that number of how many staff, I would also request that we put how many students that includes. We have the number of students for the Charter School Authority, and so we would like the number of students for Washoe County School District.
And I think I would add on to that, I think some of this is done by school as well, so that information would be helpful. With that, those in support of the motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. The motion carries. We'll go ahead and move on to our next enhancement number, which I believe is E126.
Yuri Yakovlev for the record. Picking up on page 10, Decision Unit E126 is for 2 new positions. First is an education program supervisor to lead on-site evaluations under the new monitoring and evaluations team. As previously indicated, multiple teams and supervisors perform site evaluations and monitoring. If approved, this would allow an existing position that currently leads on-site evaluations to focus on their other duties and responsibilities on the assessment and accountability side of the agency. Having to focus on both sides has been inefficient for the position according to the authority. Additionally, the governor recommends an education programs professional position to support schools with creating and implementing school performance plans that result in advanced monitoring and to also serve as the authority's main point of contact for career and technical education supports. The Every Student Succeeds Act requires advanced monitoring for certain schools that meet requirements such as having a graduation rate of 67% or less. There are 12 schools that require such monitoring, and the authority's existing position does not have the capacity to monitor 5 of them, so the Department of Education provides assistance. Additionally, the Department of Education requires all schools to have performance plans for continuous improvement. The authority's existing position for this purpose had to review 146 plans in total in fiscal year 2024 and anticipates 13 to 17 more in fiscal year 26 on top of the monitoring duties as well. During the hearing, the subcommittee inquired what the differences are between the monitoring performed by the authority compared to that of the Department of Education. The authority indicated the level of monitoring provided by the department is at a higher level, whereas the authority provides more direct technical training and ensures evidence-based approaches are utilized on a granular level on a school-by-school basis. Additionally, this new position would also be responsible for performing work related to the federal Carl D. Perkins grant, which provides career and technical education funding. This work was previously performed by the Department of Education before shifting the responsibility to the authority during the interim. There is another minor technical adjustment to remove operating equipment expenses that were included inadvertently. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of reserve reductions of $187,378 in fiscal year 2026 and $320,786 in fiscal year 2027 for 1 new education programs supervisor position and 1 new education programs professional position and associated operating costs as recommended by the governor in Decision Unit E126, inclusive of the noted technical adjustment.
Thank you so much. Members, do we have any questions for staff regarding E126? I'll go to Chair Monroe Marino.
Thank you. And my question is, for E126, is this adding another supervisory level to the school monitoring under the director's position? Is this all new?
Yuri Yakovlev for the record. Yes. So Decision Unit E125 adds the Education Programs Director to pull together all of the site evaluation and monitoring duties under one team. This position would be the supervisor for on-site evaluations, while the other position focuses on more high-level duties.
Madam Chair, can I have a follow-up? Do we know who is doing this job performance now? Because this is like a mid-level supervisor, so is there someone already doing this work currently?
There are currently 2 other education program supervisor positions within the authority right now, one of which is overseeing this work.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Members, does anyone else have any other questions? I think I understood where Chair was kind of going. One of the things is this is creating a whole new, like not department, but a division within the authority wherein we're adding multiple new layers under it. I understand other people have been doing the work. There's been a lot of challenges, but consistent with kind of cutting back, my thought was that we hold back on adding the education program supervisor at the grade 40, leave in place, just approved the recommendation for the director as well as some potential other positions. But that's kind of my thought. I don't know if anyone's agreeable or if we want to approve it as stated.
Madam Chair, I would agree with you, and I would move that we approve as you stated.
Do I have a second? Second. I have a first from Chair Dondero Loop, a second from Majority Leader Howdigy. Is there any discussion on the motion? I'll go to Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Bacchus. I will support this motion. However, what I love about charter schools and the charter school authority is they're actually in the schools, and you can be shut down if you're not performing. So this level of oversight is like nothing that we've seen in any district school. And so the more people that we have to be able to provide the oversight, I think the better.
Any other comments? I'll go to Assemblymember Haven.
And this is a question, Madam Chair. This position is not supposed to be filled until fiscal year 2027. In the event that funds become available and it is determined that this position really is needed, will they be able to come back and ask for it during IFC?
Thank you so much for that, Assemblymember Haven. Absolutely. Some of the positions we'll be looking at, especially under decision, I think it's Unit E129 are examples of that, where positions were created during the interim, and then that was handled through IFC, and then we can come back and permanently fill it in the next legislative session. Are there any other discussions on enhancement unit 126 or the motion, excuse me, that's pending? With that, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries. I'll go back to staff for enhancement E127.
Yuri Yakovlev for the record. Decision unit E127 on the bottom of page 11 is for 3 new positions. An education programs professional is recommended to assist sponsored schools with utilizing the student information system Infinite Campus. Schools do not have dedicated staff for this purpose and have issues entering student data accurately, which may have negative impacts when the data is used in determining at-risk pupil funding through the grad score, for example. There is an existing education programs professional position that supports schools, but the authority indicates they do not have the capacity to coach and train more schools, as they also have duties they're responsible for in the authority's assessment and accountability team. During the hearing, the authority elaborated on the utilization issues in Infinite Campus. For example, enrollment code guidance is often changed by the Department of Education, so if not utilized correctly, average daily enrollment may be impacted, which determines pupil-centered funding plan distributions. Additionally, the Department of Education may need to perform extra work during their pupil audits to verify or fix charter school enrollment data if entered incorrectly. If approved, the position would provide assistance and training to schools to properly enter data, which may reduce the workload for the Department of Education. Next is another education programs professional to support schools with multi-tiered systems of support. This position has the same duties and justification as the other education programs professional previously discussed in Decision Unit E125. During the hearing, the subcommittee inquired if just one new education programs professional could support the multi-tiered systems of support and the school performance plan work recommended for the other position in Decision Unit E126. The authority testified the 2 contract positions currently performing the multi-tiered systems of support work that would be replaced by this position and the other one in E125 are already at a maximum workload, so they would not have the capacity to also oversee school performance plans as well. Finally, there is a grants and projects analyst to address the workload of administering federal grants subawarded to sponsored schools. A similar position was approved by the 82nd Legislature, resulting in 2 total grants and project analyst positions. However, the authority indicates they are not able to maintain the workload for compliance, technical assistance, and monthly reimbursement requests. A table is provided on page 13, outlining the workload statistics of the grants and projects analysts, indicating 5 positions are needed to meet the projected workload in the upcoming biennium. Another grants and projects analyst is recommended in Decision Unit E128, which will be discussed next, and if approved, would bring the total number of grants and projects analyst positions to 4. The authority testified a work program would be submitted during the interim if a 5th position is needed. There is another minor technical adjustment for this decision unit. And does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of reserve reductions of $180,153 in fiscal year 2026 and $331,675 in fiscal year 2027 for 2 new education programs professional positions and 1 new grants and projects analyst position and associated operating costs as recommended by the governor in decision unit E127, inclusive of the noted technical adjustment?
Thank you so much. With that, members, do we have any questions for staff regarding E127? I know one of the positions also was the same with our other one that's currently filled by a vendor, but that vendor expires on October 1st, 2027. I would go ahead and make this recommendation of the same kind of approval with holding back right now on the education programs professional grade 39 that's handling the multi-tiered systems of support, and make that recommendation to the full joint committee. If anyone's agreeable, I would take a motion on that. I have a first from Assemblymember Torres Fawcett. I have a second from Assemblymember Howdagi. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries. We'll turn it back over to staff for enhancement E128.
Yuri Yakovlev for the record. Decision unit E128 starting at the bottom of page 13 is for another 3 new positions. First is a grants and projects analyst for the same duties and responsibilities as the one we just discussed, bringing the total to 4, which matches the current need reported by the authority in the previous table. An accounting assistant position is recommended to address the increase in grant programs administered to ensure compliance with federal guidelines, provide assistance to sponsored schools, and to supervise an existing accounting assistant position and 1 new accounting assistant recommended in this decision unit. A table is provided in the middle of page 14, outlining the accounting assistant workload, indicating 3 positions would be needed in the upcoming biennium. If this decision unit is approved, there would be 3 total accounting assistant positions in the budget. As promised, there is 1 other accounting assistant that would perform more of the data entry tasks, such as processing reimbursement requests from schools, authorizing payment vouchers, and assisting in other grant program activities. This position would serve under the other accounting assistant previously discussed. Once again, there is a minor technical adjustment, so does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of reserve reductions of $150,802 in fiscal year 2026 and $253,645 in fiscal year 2027 for 1 new grants and projects analyst position and 2 new accounting assistant positions and associated operating costs, as recommended by the governor in decision unit E128, inclusive of the noted technical adjustment.
Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and open it up to questions for staff. Is there any questions for our staff regarding enhancement E128? I'll go to Chair Monroe Marino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a question for staff, just reiterating what I said earlier about grant funding, and those grants might not be in there and the concern for that.
Thank you so much for that. That was like my same concern, is if we're not in a situation where federal funding is coming down to for application for grants. We did just approve under E127 an additional grants and projects analysis too. So I would entertain, I guess, a motion to not recommend to the joint committee approval of E128 and just kind of make the comment, obviously this does not close off this discussion completely.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I would so move as you stated.
I have a first from Chair Dodaro Loop, a second from Majority Leader Howdigy. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries. We'll go ahead and turn it back over to staff for presentation of Enhancement 129.
Yuri Yakovlev for the record. Page 15 has the last decision unit, E129, which recommends to continue funding two positions that were established during the 2023-24 interim that did not meet the thresholds requiring IFC approval, which is why they are in an enhancement decision unit now. One education programs professional currently assists schools in implementing special education services, and the other education programs professional provides site evaluations. There's a technical adjustment to eliminate rent expenses that were inadvertently included in this decision unit. So does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of reserve reductions of $324,227 in fiscal year 2026 and $322,877 in fiscal year 2027 to continue funding two education programs professional positions and associated operating costs as recommended by the governor in decision unit E129, inclusive of the noted technical adjustment?
Thank you so much. With that, members, do we have any questions for staff regarding Enhancement 129? With that, I'll go to Chair Monroe Marino.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just want to confirm that both of these positions are currently filled with an FTE, correct?
Yuri Yakovlev for the record. Yes, that is correct. Both are filled.
So I'd go ahead and entertain a motion to recommend approval of this Enhancement 129 as stated by staff, inclusive of the noted technical adjustment to remove operating expenses that were inadvertently included.
So moved.
I have a variety of motions, so thank you for that. I have a first from Assembly Member Torres Fawcett. I have a second from Chair Dondero Loop. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries. And with that, I think, we have more. I'll turn back to staff. Thank you.
Yuri Yakovlev for the record. To conclude, this budget has 7 other closing items on page 16. The governor's recommended budget included non-state-owned rent for locations that the authority no longer resides in, so there's a technical adjustment in other closing item 6 to remove that expense. And then other closing item 7 includes a technical adjustment to decrease contract expenses that were incorrectly included. As such, fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 through 5 be closed as recommended by the governor, and other closing items 6 and 7 be closed with the noted technical adjustments. And fiscal staff requests authority for staff to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
With that, members, do we have any questions for staff regarding the last item? With that, I'd go ahead and entertain a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion to recommend to the joint committees as stated by staff. I have a first from Chair Dondero Loop, a second from Majority Leader Howdigy. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries.
Yuri Yakovlev for the record. The second budget for consideration is the Public Charter School Loan Program on page 21. Fiscal staff is responsible for developing closing recommendations for this budget account. The subcommittee has not previously reviewed this budget. The program provides loans at or below market rate to charter schools for costs incurred in preparing a school to open in its first year, to improve schools that have already been in operation, or fund the recruitment of teachers and enrollment of pupils to a new school facility. This budget does not include any major closing issues or other closing items, and fiscal staff recommends this budget account be closed as recommended by the governor.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions for staff regarding the public school loan program? Public charter school loan program. With that, I would entertain a motion to recommend this budget account be closed as recommended by the governor.
So moved.
Thank you so much. I have a first from Chair Dondaro Loop, a second from Majority Leader Howdigy. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries. We're going to take like a little over a 1 minute recess so we can play musical chairs to get additional staff members up as needed to do NCHE's work session. We'll go ahead and go back on the record with, we'll go ahead and turn it back over to staff for our work session for Nevada's System of Higher Education.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, J. Marie Mangoba from the LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. I am here today to present the work session document for the Nevada System of Higher Education. No decisions would need to be made today. The purpose of this work session is to seek guidance from the Joint Subcommittee regarding the methodology and funding levels that will be considered during the closing recommendations to the full committees. Fiscal staff has provided the members the work session document as well as attachments A through E on pages 13 through 17 that provides a visual representation of the governor recommended base maintenance and enhancements and the governor recommended new funding formula distribution methodology. Fiscal staff also provided the subcommittee attachments F and G on pages 18 and 19 that summarizes the dollar impacts to each of the institutions of the various options that I will walk you throughout this work session. Fiscal staff suggests to have the attachments separate on the side as I walk through the work session document, as I will be referring to those attachments quite often. These attachments are also accessible online and is posted in Nellis for the public. Through this document and the related attachments, fiscal staff will walk the subcommittee through, first, the components of the existing higher education funding formula. Second, the recommendations from the Ad Hoc Committee on Higher Education Funding that were included in the executive budget. Third, the governor's recommended implementation to phase in the new funding formula distribution methodology and the enhanced small institution factor funding. Then I will provide a summary of the 19 budget amendments submitted by the Governor's Office of Finance for the instructional formula budget accounts, as well as the impacts of those budget amendments. And lastly, the various options the subcommittee could consider in determining how to fund the 7 instructional institutions. The existing higher education funding formula, consistent with prior formula, is not set in statute, but rather as a budget policy, which means it allows for flexibility by the legislature in determining the overall level of and methodologies used to determine how general funds are appropriated to and allocated among the 7 instructional formula budget accounts. The subcommittee may wish to determine whether to recommend approving funding for the 7 instructional formula budget accounts utilizing the traditional base maintenance and enhancement decision unit methodology as approved by the 2023 legislature, or full implementation of the new formula distribution methodology that were recommended by the Ad Hoc Committee on Higher Education Funding, the governor's recommendation for a phase-in implementation of the new formula distribution methodology as recommended by the Ad Hoc Committee on Higher Education Funding, with a hold harmless provision as well as a phase-in of enhanced small institution factor funding, or some alternative methodology as determined by the subcommittee. Regardless of the methodology selected, recommendations will need to be made regarding certain maintenance and enhancement decision units, as well as whether to accept the budget amendments recommended by the governor. If the subcommittee chooses to utilize the new funding formula distribution methodology, these decisions will determine the total amount of available general fund appropriations that will be allocated through the formula distribution. And I'm now going to provide the subcommittee the structure of the existing funding formula. The higher education funding formula determines the level of state general fund support for the 7 NSHE instructional institutions. Non-general fund revenues are not included within the funding formula, but are accounted and budgeted for within the state-supported budgets. The following information on top of page 2 provides the high-level structure of the existing higher education funding formula. First, the existing funding formula is based upon base, maintenance, and enhancement decision units, which determine the total general fund appropriations for each of the 7 instructional institutions. Second is the formula distribution. Once the total general funds are determined, certain components of the funding are carved out as institution-specific allocations. The remaining amount is referred to as available general funds, which are then distributed through the formula based upon each institution's proportionate share of the weighted student credit hours. Third is The existing formula also includes the performance funding pool policy, which sets aside 20% of the total general fund appropriations for each of the 7 instructional formula budgets, which may be earned back by the institutions if certain performance metrics or goals are met. And as some of you may recall, the 2023 legislature approved to suspend the distribution component of the higher education funding formula and allocated general fund appropriations to each of the instructional institutions using the traditional base, maintenance, and enhancement decision unit methodology. Now I'm going to walk the subcommittee through the recommended changes to the higher education funding formula by the Ad Hoc Committee on Higher Education Funding. The 2023 legislature, through Assembly Bill 493, appropriated $2 million to NSHE for an interim study of the higher education funding formula. The NSHE Board of Regents adopted these recommendations, and the committee's recommendation to implement a new distribution methodology is a cost-neutral proposal, which would result in a redistribution of existing funding amongst the institutions and require no new additional state funding. The following information at the bottom of page 2 provides the higher education funding formula changes recommended by the committee that were included in the governor's recommended budget for the 2025-27 biennium. The committee recommended to increase the weighted student credit hour value used in the small institution factor calculation from $30 to $41.08 in fiscal year 26 and $43.22 in fiscal year 27, and continue to adjust this value for inflation in future years using the Higher Education Price Index. They also recommended to increase the small institution funding cap from 100,000 weighted student credit hours to 125,000 weighted student credit hours. They also recommended to continue to distribute available general fund appropriations among the institution and implement a new distribution methodology based upon 3 components. The first component is to allocate 75% of available general fund appropriations based on each institution's weighted student credit hours count, utilizing a 3-year historical average or the prior year, whichever is greater. Second is to eliminate the current performance funding pool set aside and replace it with an outcome-based funding component, allocating 15% of the available general fund appropriations based on a relative performance growth calculation. And lastly, allocate the remaining 10% of the available general fund appropriations based on the 3 following characteristics, which include resident, non-resident, and part-time students. These 3 characteristics include total student headcount enrollment and credit hours, underrepresented minority student headcount enrollments and credit hours, and Pell-eligible student headcount enrollments and credit hours. Since all these recommendations are all included in the governor's recommended new funding formula distribution, the details of these items will be discussed further as we go along. Starting on page 3, I will now walk you through the governor's recommended new funding formula distribution. The governor's recommended budget includes a phased-in approach for the implementation of the new distribution methodology, as well as phasing in impacts from enhancements recommended for the small institution funding. The reallocation of funds through this new distribution methodology would result in an increase in funding for the Nevada State University and the community colleges, which includes College of Southern Nevada, Great Basin College, Truckee Meadows Community College, and Western Nevada College, with corresponding decreases in funding for the University of Nevada, Reno, and the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. To prevent any general fund reductions to UNR and UNLV as a result of the redistribution of funds through the formula, the governor recommends funding to hold the 2 R1 universities harmless. Therefore, rather than recommending a cost-neutral implementation of the new distribution methodology, the governor recommends increased general funds to hold UNR and UNLV harmless from the budget reductions that would otherwise occur. As submitted, the executive budget includes the following recommendations related to the implementation of enhancements to the higher education funding formula. New distribution methodology to allocate available general fund appropriations among the institutions based upon 75% weighted student credit hours, 15% relative performance or outcome-based funding, and 10% student attributes. It also includes a phase-in implementation of the fiscal impact of a new funding formula distribution methodology at 20% in fiscal year 26 and 40% in fiscal year 27. It also includes a hold harmless provision for UNR and UNLV. It also increases the threshold and add an inflationary adjustment for the small institution factor with a phase-in approach of 20% in fiscal year 26 and 40% in fiscal year 27. And it also eliminates the performance funding pool set-aside. And as I previously noted, the Governor's Finance Office submitted budget amendments which would address the following: eliminate the Governor's recommendation for additional general fund appropriations for existing salary-related expenditures over the 2025-27 biennium, resulting from the cost of living salary increases approved by the 2023 legislature. And I will commonly refer to this as Decision Unit E685. The other budget amendment would also eliminate the governor's recommendation for additional general fund appropriations to increase the weighted student credit hour value from $173.29 to $208.99 that is used to calculate caseload adjustments. And I will refer to this as Decision Unit M204. The last set of budget amendments that were submitted increases the percentage phase-in implementation of the fiscal impact of the new funding formula distribution and the small institution factor enhancements from 20% to 26.25% in fiscal year 26 and from 40% to 52.5% in fiscal year 27. During the budget hearing of NSHE on March 11th, NSHE testified it plans to continue reviewing the proposed components of the higher education funding formula and anticipates a fluid approach with continued changes to be proposed across multiple biennia. And as such, it could not determine whether the recommended hold harmless for UNR and UNLV will be a one-time recommendation for the 2025-27 biennium, or if it would be continued until the new methodology is fully implemented, nor could NSHE anticipate what the time frame may be to fully implement the new funding formula distribution methodology. The subcommittee expressed concerns about approving a funding formula that NSHE acknowledged does not work for all institutions and could possibly change or evolve from one biennium to the next. Now I'm going to walk you through the various options starting on page 4, and staff would just recommend that it may be helpful to have the attachments on the side as I walk you through the narrative of these options to get a visual representation of the fiscal impact of the 7 instructional institutions in each year of the biennium. Various tables are presented within the summarized attachments, which I will reference below to demonstrate the calculations and the general fund impact of all the options, which are summarized and presented in attachments F and G. The first option is base maintenance and enhancement methodology, and this is demonstrated in attachment A on page 13. Consistent with the budget approved by the 2023 legislature, the governor's recommended budget is built using the base, maintenance, and enhancement decision unit methodology to determine the total general fund appropriations for the 7 instructional formula budget accounts. The executive budget as submitted includes general fund appropriations of $745.8 million in fiscal year 26 and $735.4 million in fiscal year 27 for the 7 instructional formula budget accounts. This does not include Decision Unit E146, which would implement the new distribution methodology. If the subcommittee wishes to recommend funding using the traditional base maintenance and enhancement methodology based on the governor's recommended budget as originally submitted, this will be option 1 in attachment F. If I can divert the subcommittee's attention to page 13, please, attachment A. Attachment A includes 2 tables. The top table represents the fiscal year 26 base maintenance and enhancements, while the second table represents the base maintenance enhancement for fiscal year 27. And then I would also note that the columns starting from left all the way across to the right of the table just shows each of the maintenance and enhancements for each of the institutions that are included in the governor's recommended budget as submitted. The information on attachment A provides details of the governor's recommended base maintenance and enhancement, as I indicated previously. So M104 is additional funding for inflationary costs for utilities for the 7 instructional formula budgets. M200 is additional funding for research space funding, research operation and maintenance funding for dedicated research space for UNLV and UNR. M202 is for increased research space for operating and maintenance funding for UNR. M201 is for small institution funding, which would recognize that all institutions have certain fixed administrative costs regardless of size. E145 is additional funding to increase the small institution factor threshold from 100,000 weighted student credit hour to 125,000 weighted student credit hour, and increase the rate used in the current calculation from $30 to $41.08 in fiscal year 26 and $43.22 in fiscal year 27. M203 is for caseload funding adjustments. M204 are additional general fund appropriations recommended to increase the weighted student credit hour value used for the caseload adjustment from $173.29 to $208.99. This recommendation would account for the general fund appropriated to the Board of Examiners during the 2023-25 biennium for the cost of living adjustments increases for state employees and the 2-grade salary increases for university sworn positions as approved by the 2023 legislature. And I would just note, as I previously indicated, the Governor's Office of Finance submitted the budget amendment to remove and eliminate this decision unit. The Governor's Office of Finance plans to submit a similar recommendation funded with one-time general fund appropriations, as commonly known as the one-shots. There's also a decision unit E685, as I previously mentioned, and this would support increased salary-related expenditures resulting from the COLA salary increases approved by the 2023 legislature. And as also indicated earlier, the Governor's Finance Office submitted a various budget amendments to eliminate this decision unit and plans to submit a similar recommendation funded with one shot. Lastly, on attachment A is a decision unit E900, and that's just associated with some position transfers. And I would apologize, but I would have to ask you to go back to the work session document, starting on page 6. The governor's recommended new funding formula distribution. To start, available general fund for allocation are calculated by taking the total general fund appropriations from the base maintenance and enhancement methodology and deducting pre-formula allocations, or what I would refer to as carve-outs, that are institution-specific. The governor's recommended budget includes total small institution factor carve-out for Great Basin College and WNC of $1.1 million in fiscal year 26 and $1.6 million in fiscal year 27, and dedicated research space carve-out for UNR and UNLV totaling $13.3 million per year, resulting in available general fund for allocation through the distribution methodology of $731.4 million in fiscal year 26 and $720.5 million in fiscal year 27. So the table that staff had provided you on page 6 provides the calculation to determine the available general funds for allocation. And as you can see on this table, columns M shows the total general funds from the base maintenance and enhancements, while column N and O are the carve-out, resulting in available general funds for allocation as shown on column P. Once the available general funds are determined, they are then distributed through the 7 instructional formula budget accounts through this new distribution methodology that is based upon the following 3 components. The first component, as I indicated, is it will distribute 75% of this available general fund appropriations based upon each institution's proportionate share of the weighted student credit hours, which is based upon either the 3-year average or the fiscal year 24 weighted student credit hour, whichever is greater. And as you can see on the first table on page 7, Great Basin College is the only one institution that used the 3-year average, while the rest used their fiscal year 24 weighted student credit hours. The second component is to distribute 15% of available general fund appropriations based on a relative performance growth calculation or outcome-based metrics. The relative performance growth calculation compares each institution's year-over-year performance first to itself and then distributes the funds based upon the institution's relative performance growth or decline on a proportionate level compared to the other institution's relative performance outcomes. The second table on page 7 provides the calculation used to determine the percentage of general funds that will be allocated amongst the institutions based on relative performance. Column A represents, and just bear with me, I'm going to go through this table on the bottom of page 7. Column A represents the fiscal year 25 performance pool, and next to it are each institution's proportionate share. Column C and D are the 2 measurement period of performance, which are then compared in column E. Column F is the comparison of the relative growth with the other institution, and column G is the proportionate share of the performance growth. The third component is to distribute 10% of the available general fund appropriations based on the 3 student attributes, inclusive of both resident and non-resident students. The 3 student attributes, as I previously indicated, includes the total student headcount enrollment and credit hours, underrepresented minority as defined by the IPEDS, which stands for Independent Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data System, student headcount and enrollments, Pell-eligible student headcounts, enrollments, and credit hours. So if I can divert your attention on the table on page 8, this provides the calculation used to determine the percentage of general funds that would be allocated amongst the institutions based on the student attributes. The top table shows the total credit hour count, and at the bottom table shows the student head count. And the third box on the right there shows the average percentage of the 2 tables that I just mentioned. To simplify the demonstration of the new distribution methodology calculation to the 3 distribution components, we have consolidated this into a weighted percentage. And so the table on the top of page 9 provides the weighted percentage resulting from those 3 components. The weighted percentage and fiscal impact of distributing available general funds through the new funding formula distribution can also be found on Attachment B on columns Q and R, respectively, on page 14. So the options for the subcommittee to consider that is related to the new distribution methodology includes the following. First is a full implementation. The impact of the new distribution methodology as recommended would result in a redistribution of funds from UNR and UNLV to the community colleges and the state university. And if fully implemented, the new distribution methodology would result in a general fund decrease of $19.2 million for UNLV and $23.1 million for UNR, with a corresponding increases allocated among the remaining 5 institutions. A visual representation of the full implementation of the new higher education funding formula is provided in Attachment B on page 14. If the subcommittee wishes to recommend approval of a full implementation of the funding formula, this would be option 2A in Attachment F. And I'm going to ask the subcommittee if you could please, I can get your attention to page 14, Attachment B. So the column M starts with the base maintenance enhancements. Column N and O are the carve-outs, which is institution-specific, resulting in available general funds for allocation as shown on column P, totaling $731.4 million in fiscal year 26 and $720.5 million in fiscal year 27. This available general fund for allocation is then multiplied by each of the percentages in column Q. Then we add back the carve-outs, and we would arrive with the total general funds for each of the institutions on column U. Column V shows the fiscal impact, which takes the final general fund, as shown in column U, minus what we originally started in column M with the base maintenance enhancement. The other option for the subcommittee to consider is the governor's recommended implementation. The governor recommends the implementation of the new distribution methodology through a phase-in of the total distribution impact at 20% in fiscal year 26 and a 40% in fiscal year 27, which would result in a general fund decrease of $5.8 million for UNLV and $7.1 million for UNR, with corresponding increases allocated among the other 5 instructional formula budget accounts over the 2025-27 biennium. However, the governor's recommended budget has included funding that would hold UNR and UNLV harmless from the budgetary reductions that would otherwise occur with the implementation of this new distribution methodology. Decision Unit E-146 includes additional general funds of $4.1 million in fiscal year 26 and $8.8 million in fiscal year 27 for Nevada State University and the community colleges, without corresponding reductions for UNR and UNLV, thus reflecting the hold harmless recommendation for these 2 R1 institutions. A visual representation based on the governor's recommended to phase in the total distribution impact at 20% in 26 and 40% in fiscal year 27 without a hold harmless provision for UNR and UNLV is provided in Attachment C on page 15. If the subcommittee wishes to recommend this approach, this option will be option 2B in Attachment F. And I would again divert the subcommittee's attention to page 15, Attachment C. So this table, Attachment C, shows the phase-in recommendation at 20% in fiscal year 26 and 40% in fiscal year 27, resulting in a decrease of 4.1 million in fiscal year 26 and 8.8 million in fiscal year 27 for UNR and UNLV, with a corresponding increase to Nevada State University and the community colleges, as shown on columns W and column X. Oh, and I'm sorry, column W shows the impact. Column X shows the final total general fund per institution if this option is approved. And then staff has also provided another attachment of the governor's recommended phase-in, including this version on Attachment D includes the hold harmless provision for UNR and UNLV. If the subcommittee wishes to recommend this approach, this will be option 2C in Attachment F. So if you look at Attachment D on page 16, the only difference is you can see that on column W, UNR and UNLV has a zero amount there, and that reflects the hold harmless. During the budget hearing, she testified, while the new distribution methodology shifts funds from UNR and UNLV to the other 5 institutions, there were no desire to harm the R1 institutions by recommending budget reductions. Therefore, the recommendation to phase in the new distribution methodology with a hold harmless for UNR and UNLV would minimize the amount of additional general funds needed to otherwise hold the 2 R1 university harmless under full implementation of the new distribution methodology. This would also allow for a ramp up of the implementation impacts, providing the institution the opportunity to phase in any budgetary impacts from shifts in funding as a result of the new distribution methodology. Now I'm going to start discussing the impacts of the budget amendments. So starting on page 10 of your work session document, the first set of budget amendments that were submitted were to eliminate decision units E685 and M204. The amendments, by eliminating these 2 decision units, it resulted in a reduction in the total general fund appropriations by 31.7 million in each year of the 2025-27 biennium. So if the subcommittee wishes to accept these budget amendments and recommend funding using the base maintenance and enhancement methodology, this will be option 3 in attachment G, which you can find on page 14. The elimination of decision units E685 and M204 would reduce the amount of available general funds that will be allocated through the new funding formula distribution and therefore impact the redistribution of funds amongst the institutions. A visual representation of the full implementation of the fiscal impact of the new funding formula distribution with the elimination of decision unit E685 and M204 is provided in attachment E on page 17. If the subcommittee wishes to accept the amendments and recommend approval of the full implementation of the new distribution methodology, this will be option 3A in attachment G. So attachment E works similar to the attachment B, except that the total general funds is now lower, and as well as the fiscal impact of the formula distribution. Additionally, the elimination of decision units E685 and M204 would reduce the recommended phase-in impacts of the new funding formula distribution. If the subcommittee wishes to accept the amendments and recommend approval of a phase-in of the fiscal impact of the new distribution methodology without holding UNR and UNLV harmless, this would be option 3B in attachment G on page 19. Alternatively, if the subcommittee wishes to accept the amendments to eliminate Decision Unit E685 and M204 and recommend approval of a phase-in of the fiscal impact of the new distribution methodology and include a hold harmless for UNR and UNLV, this option is option 3C in attachment G on page 19. To mitigate a reduction of general funds that will be experienced by Nevada State University and the community colleges following the recommended phase-in of the new distribution methodology, resulting from the elimination of Decision Unit E685 and M204, the Governor's Office of Finance submitted additional budget amendments to increase the percentage of the fiscal impact of the phase-in of the new funding formula distribution and the enhanced small institution factor from 20% to 26.25% in fiscal year 26 and from 40% to 52.5% in fiscal year 27. If the subcommittee wishes to recommend approval of the amended phase-in of the fiscal impact of the funding formula distribution and the small institution factor enhancement at 26.25% in fiscal year 26 and 52.5% in fiscal year 27, without holding UNR and UNLV harmless, this will be option 4A in attachment G on page 19. And alternatively, if the subcommittee wishes to recommend approval of the governor's recommendation as amended to phase in the fiscal impact of the funding formula distribution and small institution factor enhancement at 26.25% in fiscal year 26 and 52.5% in fiscal year 27, and holding UNR and UNLV harmless, this would be option 4B on attachment G on page 19. So starting on page 11 of your work session document is the summary of all the options that the subcommittee may wish to consider. Attachments F and G are would show the impacts of the new distribution methodology, and it may be helpful to look at those attachments as I walk through these options with you. As previously noted, the decision units and associated amendments recommended by the governor will need to be decided upon, regardless of whether the subcommittee recommends to fund the 7 instructional formula budget accounts using the base maintenance and enhancement methodology, or to utilize the new funding formula distribution methodology. The details of those decision units and amendments, as I indicated, are outlined under number 1 of the options for consideration by the subcommittee section and not detailed and repeated here. So the first option is approve budgeting the higher education funding using the base maintenance and enhancement methodology without the new funding formula distribution methodology. And again, this is attachment A and option 1 on attachment F. Or approve the new funding formula distribution methodology. If so, the subcommittee would need to consider the following options. A is approve the full implementation of the fiscal impact of the new funding formula distribution. This visual representation of this can be found in attachment B. This will be option 2A on attachment F. The other option is approve a phase-in of the fiscal impact of the new funding formula distribution at 20% in fiscal year 26 and 40% in fiscal year 27 without holding UNR and UNLV harmless. This is illustrated in attachment C. And this option is 2B on attachment F. Or approve the governor's recommendation of a phase-in of the fiscal impact of the new funding formula distribution at 20% in fiscal year 26 and 40% in fiscal year 27 with a hold harmless provision for UNR and UNLV. And this was demonstrated in attachment D. This will be option 2C on attachment F. The other option is approving the amendments that remove decision units E685 and M204. Approve budgeting using the base maintenance and enhancement methodology without the new formula. Apologize, let me go back. So option 3 is approve budgeting using the base maintenance and enhancement methodology without the new distribution methodology, and approve the budget amendments to eliminate decision units E685 and M204. This is option 3, again on attachment G. Or approve the new funding formula distribution methodology and approve the budget amendments to eliminate decision unit E685 and M204. And if so, the subcommittee would need to consider the following options. A is approve the full implementation of the fiscal impact of the new funding formula distribution with removal of decision units E685 and M204. This can be found on attachment E, and this is option 3A on attachment G. Or B, approve the phase-in of the fiscal impact of the new funding formula distribution at 20% in fiscal year 26 and 40% in fiscal year 27, with the removal of decision units E685 and M204, and without the hold harmless provision for UNR and UNLV. This is option 3B on attachment G. Or approve the phase-in of the fiscal impact of the new funding formula distribution at 20% in fiscal year 26 and 40% in fiscal year 27, with the removal of decision unit E685 and M204, with the hold harmless provision for UNR and UNLV. This would be option 3C on attachment G. Or approve the funding formula distribution methodology and amended phase-in percentages of the fiscal impact. These options are based on the governor's amendments to remove decision units E685 and M204. And if so, the subcommittee will need to consider the following. Approve the amended phase-in of the fiscal impact of the new funding formula distribution and small institution factor enhancement at 26.25% in fiscal year 26 and 52.5% in fiscal year 27, with the budget amendments that eliminated decision units E685 and M204, and without the hold harmless provision for UNR and UNLV. This will be option 4A on attachment G. Or lastly, approve the amended phase-in of the fiscal impact of the new funding formula distribution and small institution factor enhancement at 26.25% in fiscal year 26 and 52.5% in fiscal year 27, with the budget amendments that eliminated decision unit E685 and M204, and with the hold harmless provision for UNR and UNLV. This is option 4B on attachment G. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much for that very detailed presentation, and all the work that goes into on all the charts. This is obviously a work session, so our staff is looking for direction from us as to where we may go for looking towards budget closing. So with that, members, do we have any comments, questions for our staff with respect to the INCHE funding formula? I'll go to Chair Monroe Moreno.
I must have had a look on my face. I believe Assemblymember Haven does have a comment. I just wanted to say to staff, thank you. This is a ton of work, a ton of options. I know this committee expressed its concerns with the new funding formula. Thank you for taking all of that into account. It is a lot. The options under 3 are where I'd be leaning, but that's my personal opinion. I'd like to hear what Assemblymember Hafen has to say.
With that, we can go ahead to Assemblymember Hafen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chair. I again, want to thank staff. This is a lot to digest. A lot of work has gone into this, and I know the new funding formula was looking at the various universities and how we need to be funding them. One of my concerns is that the smaller universities here might be impacted more if we don't go with the new funding formula. But I also understand that today we're looking at a potential economic forum that may not be as pretty as it was going to look a couple weeks ago. And so I understand we have some very tough decisions. And I just want to thank staff for that, the extra work that's gone into it. And if the economic forum comes back and we're able to do a little bit more, I do want to look at some of the smaller universities to see if we can do a little bit of extra benefit to them, because I do know that they do a lot for our communities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. With that, I will go to Majority Leader Canizero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And of course, a huge thank you to our staff for putting this all together and allowing us to sort of see in real numbers what some of these decision points are. As it is no surprise to anybody who was here for the initial budget hearing, I too share concerns about the funding formula. And I understand that there were constraints regarding the funding formula and its development, but I think what we were presented with, and I understand too that the prior funding formula that we had sort of abided by also had concerns, thus prompting us to ask for an evaluation and some perspective on a new funding formula. I think my struggle with the funding formula that was presented to us is that it still is not presenting us with something that feels workable, with a lot of uncertainty in future biennias, with a lot of uncertainty regarding how much additional general fund dollars we will have to put in to just sort of support and supplement UNLV and UNR. And so I don't think that we were presented with something that also is workable. I think along the same lines as Assemblymember Hafen mentioned, we're also looking at a situation where there are a number of requests pending before us with respect to NSHE, and an economic forum that I think everybody is well anticipating is going to be significantly less than what we had originally anticipated and what this recommended budget is based on. I still am struggling to see the wisdom in implementing a funding formula that continues to have issues and that we are going to have to maybe come back and redo. And so I think along the same lines as Chair Monroe Moreno mentioned, option 3, which I know is maybe not everybody's favorite because I think there are some folks who did like the funding formula. I don't think as a whole it is workable. And so I think making sure that we are maintaining our base maintenance and enhancement, understanding that there are one-shots that we'll have to consider with respect to M206 and E165, M204 and E165, 68, E168 and M204. Jay is going to make sure that I am on E685. Yeah. I'm just gonna write it down and make sure I get that one right. Okay. And then M204. Those are coming in one-shot appropriations per the budget amendments that we'll have to have additional conversations about. But I think at this point, what I would prefer would be option 3, which would be that base maintenance and enhancement. And you'll let me know if I'm on the right track there. And then, I think a further and larger conversation about what really is needed to put together a funding formula that will work and that won't have maybe some of the constraints that I think made it difficult for us to get something this session that makes sense. And so I think that's just where I am leaning, Madam Chair, with respect to today's direction for staff and as we approach closing.
Thank you so much for the comments. Members, do we have any other comments to give staff guidance? I think a lot of us, with the funding, keep looking back to option 3. And then obviously, as money allows us, I know a lot of that's going to go into the a one-shot look at as well. So with that, members, I think hopefully staff has enough direction, unless anyone else has any other comments. Okay. With that, I guess we can close out our work session, and we can move on to our final item on our agenda, which is public comment. Remember, public comment's 2 minutes. So people in Carson City, feel free to come up to the dais. And first one there will get to start us off. Welcome, Mr. Marks.
Good morning. Alexander Marks of the Nevada State Education Association. NSA is concerned about the fast-growing budget of the State Public Charter School Authority and the schools under its purview. Since 2017, we've called for stronger oversight of charter schools, especially given the separate and unequal dynamics between them and the neighborhood public schools. In 2019, this body passed AB 462, requiring the SPCA to develop a growth management plan. Unfortunately, the intent of that law has not been followed. Since then, charter enrollment has surged over 25,000 students, a 57% increase, while school districts have lost more than 40,000 students. So now they are the second largest school district in Nevada. This was glaringly clear last year when the authority approved a 1,400 student charter school right next to Alice Smith Elementary, a Washoe County school district at just 72% capacity. Washoe County has warned that this could force the closure of at least one of its elementary schools. The explosive growth of charters is fueled by billionaire investments and a lack of basic safeguards, part of the broader effort to privatize public education for profit. NSCA's never been against charter schools. We've just always been against the profit motive driving the current system. Much of that profit does come from land deals and for-profit education management organizations, which are largely unaccountable. We urge you to support Senator Daley's SB 318 addressing this issue. We've always pushed to level the playing field when public education or public school teachers must be fully licensed. That's not the case with charter schools, and charters serve far fewer students with IEPs, English language learners, and low-income backgrounds. They're also more likely to expel students with behavioral issues, sending them back into district schools, creating a harmful two-tiered system. We urge the K-12 Budget Subcommittee to demand greater accountability from the State Public Charter School Authority and its budget decisions. Thanks.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair and committee members. My name is Jan Giles, and I am the president of the Education Support Employees Association, which represents over 8,000 support professionals in Clark County. The Commission on School Funding has been working on the plan for 5 years. They are the experts in this area and spent a lot of time and money to create it. We are asking for you to pass the plan so that the funding can be added to the Pupil Center funding. This increase will help raise salaries for support professionals. Clark County is in desperate need of additional funds to reclassify the lowest positions. These positions are employees that come to work every day, even though they are being bitten and hit and spit on by students. Clark County School District could not run without these employees. I received numerous emails and calls asking me to help find ways to raise their salaries. CCSD is number 3, only behind Walmart and Amazon, with the highest number of employees on public assistance. I am asking for your support in passing the plan. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Misty Olmos. I am a paraprofessional for CCSD, and I am the Secretary-Treasurer for ESA, which represents the support professionals for Clark County School District. I am asking you to pass the plan to help our educators stop worrying about how to provide for their families. We all deserve to go to work and give our all to our students and not have to worry about paying our bills. Please pass this plan so we could all take a deep breath and breathe again. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Andrea Kelly. I am the Humboldt County Support Staff Organization President. I am also a program coordinator for adult and correctional education. Our schools are at a crossroads. Year after year, Nevada ranks near the bottom in per pupil funding, and our education system struggles under the weight of inadequate resources, staffing shortages, and outdated infrastructure. The time for action is now. That's why I strongly support the Nevada State Education Association's Pass the Plan campaign, a comprehensive strategy to secure funding our students and educators desperately need. I've personally seen what happens when public education is no longer a priority. In my youth, I had the opportunity to travel and live in Mexico, where I witnessed firsthand the devastating impact of an underfunded public education system. Private schools became the schools of choice for those who could afford them. The wealthiest families sent their children to elite private schools, where teachers were paid well and students had access to the best resources. Those students went on to prestigious universities and high-paying careers. Meanwhile, children whose families couldn't afford private schools received a mediocre education, rarely had the opportunity to attend top universities, and were often left struggling economically. The rich got richer and the poor stayed poor, and the middle class all but disappeared. Nevada is already ranked 48th in the nation for per pupil funding, and schools are being forced to make devastating cuts, particularly to programs that serve our most vulnerable students. If we continue down this path, we risk creating the same broken system I saw in Mexico, where access to quality education is determined by wealth rather than opportunity. I implore our legislators, increase per pupil funding, invest in our students, and pay educators a living wage that keeps up with inflation. Our children's future should come before Hollywood's bottom line. Pass the plan. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is April Wycliffe. I am an SPTA with CCSD. That is a specialized program teacher's assistant. I work with the most vulnerable of students. I am one of those people who has been bitten, hit, and spat on. I have been in this current position for 20 years. I work with the most vulnerable of students with learning disabilities, severe emotional disorders, and functional life skills. I change diapers on a daily basis. I, again, get hit and spat on. I have been in this position for all 20 years with CCSD. I am here to represent all of my fellow ESPs, which deserve a voice and to be heard, especially my direct co-paraprofessionals. In all of my time as an employee, along with being a student who grew up with parents working with CCSD, have I ever seen things this bad. We need your help. I need your help. Please keep the funds with us and stop sending the funds elsewhere. This is why I'm asking you to pass this plan, and thank you for your time.
Good morning, Chair Backus and members of the committee. My name is Heather Sims, SIMMS, and I am a proud educator in Winnemucca. I am the pre-K to fourth grade music teacher at Grass Valley Elementary, and I'm also the secretary of the Humboldt Education Association and a board member for the Nevada State Education Association. I'm speaking with you today to urge you to pass the recommended funding for schools as recommended by the Nevada Commission on School Funding. This plan is essential to help Nevada reach optimal funding levels. My part of the state is valued for its mineral resources, but what should be most valued are our children and their education to build them a better future. Without the state passing the recommended funding, the teachers in my school and I are worried about the cuts coming to our school district's funding, including the closure of a school in denial. We are also worried about the cuts to staff, especially cuts to our instructional aides, whom teachers cannot be effective without. Cuts could mean even greater class sizes, which rob students of the opportunity to receive the highest quality education possible. Research shows that class sizes matter, and if Nevada wants to make the educational gains, passing the Commission's recommended funding will help make those the gains we all want to see. Being a music teacher, funding or lack thereof directly affects my students. I have 400 students who come into my classroom every week excited for music. I'm fortunate enough to have a high quality curriculum that I use in my classroom that helps students learn the foundations of music at a young age. But paying for that curriculum did not come from my school or my school district. The music teachers in our 3 elementary and our 1 middle school applied for a grant from Nevada Gold Mines for the curriculum we're using this year. I'm grateful to Nevada Gold Mines, but we should not have to apply for grants just to have a high-quality music program. I should not have to use Donor Choose to crowdfund supplies for my classroom in order to replace broken mallets for the barred instruments and the drums and tambourines that have been patched so many times over the years, because funding for the arts is always last. My students deserve more. While I greatly appreciated the increased funding for public education from the last legislation session, the current plan is not going to fund our schools in a meaningful way. Everything is more expensive, and our rural schools are especially affected by rising costs. So I implore the members of this committee to use this opportunity to push the other legislators and Governor Lombardo to pass the plan as recommended by the Nevada Commission for School Funding. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Good morning, esteemed members of the committee. My name is Melinda Riemersma, Riemersma. I am here with the Nevada State Education Association. I am in front of you today not just as an educator, but as a mom and a grandma. I am urging you to support and pass the funding plan recommended by the Commission on School Funding. As an educator, I have seen firsthand the undeniable need for an education system that not only serves but uplifts every student. As a mom and a grandma, I deeply understand the responsibility we have to nurture and protect the future of our children. It's not just about academic achievement. It's about their safety, their emotional well-being, and their ability to grow to full potential. This week, our district was faced with the heartbreaking news of devastating cuts to our counseling services provided by UNLV and UNR. These services were vital lifelines for our most at-risk students, those who have experienced sexual assault, abuse, and other deeply traumatic events. These are our students who, without these critical services, have nowhere else to turn. In our rural communities where resources are scarce and stretched thin, the school is often the only safe place these children have. Yet the financial support being offered of $2 per student next year simply will not come close to providing the resources needed to support these children, let alone the overall needs of our schools. This is a call for action. If we are to stand by our commitment to our children, to our future, we must ensure that the resources are there. We cannot afford to let the children slip through the cracks. They deserve more than this. Their future depends on it. During the last legislative session, we gratefully saw a commitment to funding public education. Unfortunately, the proposed budget this session threatens to reverse all of the progress that has been made. We cannot allow that setback to happen. When considering the future of our state, we need to simply not think about the present, but about the lasting impact we leave on the generations that will inherit the decisions made today. The future of our state is directly tied to the strength of our education system. Wouldn't you like to be able to look back and know that you were on the right side of history, advocating for progress and the well-being of our children? By supporting funding that ensures the growth and development of our state, we have the power to shape a future that is not just sustainable, but one that uplifts today and in the years to come. I know that these are very difficult decisions, but they are necessary. I thank you for all your time and consideration and ask that you support our students, their future, and our schools by passing the plan.
Dear Chairperson Backus and members of the committee, my name is Jeremy Heckler, and I am the teacher librarian at J.T. McWilliams Elementary School in Las Vegas, and I'm a proud member of the NEAF Southern Nevada. As a teacher librarian, I see and teach every student in every class on campus, and I am asking you to pass the plan. Every outcome of school funding makes an appearance in the library. A cut of a teacher can lead to a library class with 57 fourth graders in it. A budget cut may make sure students can't read the new Dogman book or the latest grade level nonfiction book on AI or the animals featured in the latest curriculum. When students get online, they find that great resource the school had for researching that animal is now gone. A budget cut may mean a library aid is cut and library books don't get put out or are hard to find because a support staff member isn't there to assist. It can mean that a self-contained class may lose an SPTA that helps students grow life skills and gain valuable general education experiences by being present in the library. A teacher librarian often will pay for things by buying books with their own money, but a teacher librarian can't buy a new teacher with their own money. A teacher librarian can't buy computer databases that help students do research. A teacher librarian can't buy a support staff member. The library is a microcosm of the school, and can be an evergreen tree of wonder and learning that helps make our students college and career ready. Failure to fund education makes our evergreen trees turn black. I'm asking you to pass the plan.
Hello, my name is Tora Thomas. I am an OS2 in the SPED department at Cheyenne High School in Clark County School District. I'm asking you to pass the plan so that we can continue to do what it is that we do for our community. I work very close with the SPED department and see that our program is lacking a lot of SPTAs to make sure that the program stays successful. We have children that have a very wide range of disabilities, like autism, spectrum disorder, emotional and behavior disorder, physical disabilities. We also have nonverbal children. A lot of these children aren't even with their family members. They're in group homes. We are some of these children only family. This is why I'm asking you to pass the plan. These programs are underfunded. Thank you.
My name is Larry Renteria. I'm a Lowry High School teacher in Winnemucca, Nevada. I'm also a veteran and a special education teacher and a coach. I believe it's important to pass a plan to help our students. I'm passionate about teaching and coaching and working with students. Being a coach is purposeful. It gives me a greater opportunity to build relationships with the students I serve in the community. Under the current funding, under the proposal, we're going to lose special education teachers, thus spreading my time more thin. We're going to lose resources and after-school programs that will take away from building those relationships with the students. We'll have larger caseloads. And as a veteran and an educator, I know the importance of being able to build the relationships with these students. And when we take that away from them, we start to lose them. We want to support them. By passing the plan, it'll invest in our future. We'll be able to foster those relationships, working with those kids, making a difference so it gives them the best opportunity for success. And then that's one of our goals, and that just supports our community and provides a brighter future for all of us. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Jamie Tedrinsky. I am a 13-year educator, incoming vice president of NEA of Southern Nevada, and a board member of the Nevada State Association. I am most proudly a teacher and department chair of the Magnet program at Canyon Springs High School in North Las Vegas, and a teacher for the Communities and Schools program. I have taught in classrooms across 3 states, led accreditation teams, advised student leaders, and worked closely with families navigating under-resourced schools. Nevada remains amongst the lowest in the nation for per pupil funding, more than $4,000 below the national average. And while educators continue to show up every day with heart and dedication, heart doesn't pay for classroom materials. It doesn't reduce class sizes, provide intervention staff, or address the needs of our English learners, students with disabilities, and children in poverty. Our Communities and Schools program has been cut in half for next year, meaning that some of our students, despite our best efforts, will likely fall through the gaps. Pass the Plan offers a research-based, long-term solution to close that gap. It's not a quick fix. It's a commitment to building a public education system that truly serves all students. This plan sets a path forward for optimal funding within the next decade, ensuring that resources go where they're needed the most. As a classroom teacher, I urge you to support this vision. Fully funding education is not just the right thing to do, it is the smart thing to do for Nevada's future. Our students, educators, and communities are counting on you. Thank you for your time and your commitment to Nevada schools.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Sherry Spencer, and I am proudly representing the rural community of Lincoln County, Nevada. I serve as the president of the Lincoln County Education Association and currently the chair for the Task Force for Teacher and Support Staff Recruitment and Retention. I teach at CO Bastion High School, a correctional education facility serving students ages 12 to 18. These young people have faced serious challenges and are working hard to turn their lives around. They rely on education as a second chance, often their only chance to build a better future. When funding is cut, it doesn't just reduce resources, it directly impacts the students who are already underserved and overlooked. Every dollar lost is an opportunity lost. for students who can't afford to lose another one. Our commitment to equity in education must include those who need it most. I am here to stress today something simple but powerful. We must pass the plan. Now, not tomorrow, not next year, but now. The future of our students and our state depends on it. Nevada's education is like a house with cracks in the foundation. Underpaid teachers, support staff, and outdated materials, and unequal access to resources. The structure stays unstable if we keep building on a shaky base. The plan is like a blueprint to repair and reinforce the foundation by investing in teachers, support staff, students, and scholars, so the house can grow stronger and support future generations. Just like you would not build your dream house on a weak foundation, we should not build Nevada's future on an unstable education system. Let's fix the foundation now so everything we build will last. Let's pass the plan because Nevada kids are worth it. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Shawina Timms from Las Vegas, Nevada, Team and Family Advocate, Clark County School District, Advanced Technologies Academy. After record increases to education funding last session, Nevada trails the national average by more than $4,000 per student. If per pupil funding is reduced, Nevada students will fall further behind. That is why you must pass the plan. In 2022, the Commission on School Funding developed a clear research-backed roadmap to reach optimal funding within 10 years. To stay on track, in Nevada, we must make a $700 per pupil increase in each of the next 2 years, totaling just over $600 million for the biennium. While avoiding proposals that direct public dollars into private interests such as stadium vouchers, private school vouchers, and Hollywood giveaways, we need you, the legislators, to know how your decisions on education funding impact educators, our students, our schools, and our families. Pass the plan to reach optimal funding in the next 10 years, and we need it to be passed this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. With that, we'll go to Las Vegas. It doesn't look like there's anyone in Las Vegas wishing to give public testimony this morning. So, AVH, is there anyone on the phone lines wishing to give public comments this morning?
Thank you, Chair. The public lines are open and working. However, we don't have any callers to provide comment at this time.
Thank you so much. With that, we can go ahead and close our meeting.